Are you always coming up with ideas? Do you marvel at successful business owners? Do you hate being told what to do? Ever take things apart just to see how they work? Are you a dreamer? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wortham, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Pro Tapes and Specialties is the world leader in tape manufacturing and specialty conversion with over 40 years of experience. In addition to our pro brand of high-quality specialty adhesive tapes, we provide contract converting services that help improve your profitability, streamline your supply chain, and reduce inventory cost. We offer the most complete range of converting capabilities in the industry, such as cloth tape, double-coated tape, specialty tape, paper tape, masking tape, vinyl tape,
carton sealing tape, adhesive transfer tape, duct tape, foam tape, electrical tape, filament tape, foil tape, reflective tape.
And the tape just keeps on rolling. Visit us online today at www.protapes.com or call us at 800-345-0234. Pro Tapes, it's just how we roll.
Welcome to another fantastic episode of the Entrepreneur Enclave, Life's Coming Attraction. I am your host, Kevin Wortham. I am so excited today, my friends. This young lady is a trifecta of success. Monica Michelle, what's going on, girlfriend? How are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So you were surprised that you were a trifecta of success, right?
I'm very happy to hear it.
Okay.
It sounds wonderful.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to break it all down so the listening audience knows exactly what I mean. So I'm going to start first where and how I met you. You were doing cigar promotions, and you were doing a cigar event, I believe, was at the Carnegie Club.
Correct. Well, the Merchants, perhaps. I think it was Merchants.
Merchants, yes. And I met you there, and that was a fantastic event. And since then, you and I have kept in touch. So tell me how did you grow your interest? How did you have an interest in cigars? How did that start?
Oh gosh. So yeah, right. It's been so many years that I've smoked that I kind of forget that story. But kind of like many women, you kind of get introduced to it by a boyfriend, and you start smoking. And originally, actually, it was in the 90s, I actually did a promotional modeling for a liquor company, and they incorporated cigars. And I was like, this is kind of intriguing. But at that time, I was kind of anti-smoke. And
not now, though.
Yeah, definitely not now. But years later, I was introduced to it from a different perspective, obviously as a smoker and not, having worked an event, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed how it made me feel. Obviously, like many people, I started out with flavored, but quickly was introduced to non-flavored through the Padron 1964 series.
Yes.
And which is a doozy, but immediately just kind of took to the pastime and continued on. I mean, it was really fairly quickly after being introduced to it from an ex.
Now, at what point did you decide that, man, I've got something good here. Why don't I start like a cigar following, and we start doing our own promotions to invite other folks to be a part of this lifestyle that I enjoy? At what point?
That wasn't a thought. I'm going to be very honest. So it's kind of the very brief version of the story is it's a merge of one of my pastimes and another.
Okay.
I'm a writer. I've written a book, and I was in the middle of writing the book or writing the second installment of the book. And I was at Merchants, oddly enough, which is where I had my first event, quite apropos. And the manager of Merchants came over to me and said, you're here frequently, you're writing. How do I get other professional women like you in here? We would like a female presence here. And I said, oh, easy breezy, say no more. I can do that. Right? I know women, they smoke.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was, I don't remember what day it was, but within 3 weeks, I had the first Sticks and Stilettos event. I had already had my Instagram page where I was smoking and hashtagging. I was using the hashtag sexy sticks, STIXX, because at that time I was considering an accessory line for women.
Yes.
But I kind of didn't have the time to do that because I went on to another venture. And so Sticks and Stilettos was born from that, from my kind of usage of the word sticks and
Yes.
sexy.
Yes.
And I called the event Sticks and Stilettos. I called a woman that I know and said, hey, do you want to join in on this event? And she did. And we kind of oversold merchants. We had it at merchants,
Yes.
and we oversold merchants. So it wasn't really a thought of I'd like to collectively get women together to smoke.
Gotcha.
So I'm pretty much a loner.
Okay. Okay.
But I do enjoy smoking with my friends. But the idea was great. And then it honestly just took on a life of its own, really. Just the name kind of, I guess, was catchy, and it took on a name of its own. So we're not necessarily a club,
Yes.
more so than I am a producer of events specific to that name.
Got you. Well, whatever you want to call yourself, Monica, you are doing a fantastic job. You are like like one of the industry leaders. I'm being honest with that.
Oh, thank
yeah.
you. That's very sweet of you.
Because when you look at the number, well, before I get to that, when you look at your rise within the cigar ranks, have you noticed that a lot of women have begun to smoke cigars as well?
Well, that's been, I mean, I want to say kind of the insurgence of women smoking
Yes.
kind of started, I want to say probably from my purview,
Yes.
2013, 2014. Sticks and Stilettos was born in 2015.
Okay.
And so the reason why it was so wildly popular is because people, women were kind of like, hey, what's this new pastime? But more importantly, I think women were kind of like, oh, this is where the men are.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to be where the men are. And so, but since then, different from just women smoking and enjoying the pastime, I think the popularity of women's cigar social clubs and
Yes.
women who promote events specifically for women has taken on a life of its own. That's the difference. I think women smoked before.
Okay.
I don't think a lot of African American women smoked. I think there were a lot of Latina women that smoked.
Okay.
And a lot of white women and Asian women, because believe it or not, China is one of the largest consumers of cigars in the world.
I did not.
Yeah.
I did not know that in terms of cigars. I knew that in terms of cigarettes. I didn't know that
Yeah.
in terms of cigars. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's obviously a numbers game, right? They just
Yes.
have more people.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but, so seeing all the new clubs and, all the new female focused cigar social clubs
Yes.
and, cigar branded events and accessory lines, it's wonderful to see. I mean, it's wonderful to see. And particularly since women have been the background to the foreground of the cigar industry for
Yes.
so many years,
Absolutely.
that it's good to see them finally coming and promoting it on the forefront.
Yes. The other thought that I had in terms of the rise, particularly of African Americans, is that now women are becoming more empowered. Again, women are becoming stronger, more stronger head of households, and so they want
Right.
to enjoy the fullness of life, even if that includes doing tequilas, bourbons, cognacs, and cigars. No, listen, when I got into smoking cigars, probably about 27, 28 years ago, women were scared to death to come into a cigar shop. So I would have to do Win and Wine of Wednesdays, just to encourage women to come in. But nowadays, there are more women smoking cigars, more cigar clubs that support women, more women who own cigar shops. You have more women doing cigar trips that cater specifically to women. I love it, man. I love it. So I thank you. But what I was going to say was, you were the first woman who I met that really took the promotion of smoking cigars and the sexiness to the next level. So thank you. I mean, if I had, I don't have that. Okay. I was trying to hit one of those buttons on my podcasting where we were giving you a hand clap, but I'll just do that right now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
No.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey. It's been a fun journey to see the ladies. It's been a fun journey to watch the ladies. I mean, on my Instagram, I don't have a lot of. I admittedly, I'm not really so I try not to be a social media person. I'm not. I'm not hugely popular. I don't have tens of thousands of followers on social media.
Yes.
And there's a whole reason behind that. That is a whole other podcast,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that's a whole other discussion.
I'm going to call you back
But
on that one.
right,
Yeah.
but it is it's amazing to see, and I'm hoping the young ladies who do have tens of thousands of followers are able to monetize it in a way that a lot of the men are. I mean, I think a lot of the women have taken on to taken the role of, being in the new girls club, as I call it, because it used to be the boys club, right? This is
Yes.
called now the new girls club because
Yes.
they are working and finishing their degrees and coming home and still cooking for their men, and they're like, okay, well, this is a good pastime as well.
Yes.
And so that's kind of why they say that they want to smoke. And so wine, while delicious, doesn't always pair perfectly with cigars. So it's a no-brainer to kind of pair whiskeys and to kind of get
Yes.
anointed to the whiskey craze and the bourbon craze and the rum craze, because it just is a better pairing. Those are just better pairing spirits.
Yes. Now, so this was just a happenstance for you to do this venture.
Yes.
Your full-time gig was real estate, right?
Yes. So I've been
Yeah,
a broker for
yes.
20 years.
What?
So that's what makes me my money.
Yes.
But I have been a realtor for 20 years.
Yes.
I started as obviously a licensed agent under a franchise, and I was successful. I think I sold my first house within my first 60 days, which I pride myself on, because people think that real estate is very, very easy to get into. And unless you have a footprint in the real estate industry before you get your license,
Yes.
it's not quite as easy as you think. And so I tell them it's not for the faint of heart, right? Because
Absolutely.
it's cyclical, and like right now, the market is absolutely insane. But I think I sold my first $500,000 house within my first 2 months, and I was kind of like, oh, I'm all in for this. I love sales, I love people relations. That's what I have my degrees in, psychology. So I literally just started in real estate. Then 2 years later, I got my associate broker license. So
Yes.
I was acting as a broker associate. And I was with two major franchises for the bulk of my career. And then in September or the summer of last year, I decided to open my own boutique, Black-owned, female-owned boutique
Wow.
real estate brokerage in Westchester County.
Okay,
So
let's slow down, Michelle.
yeah.
Monica, let's slow down, because that's a lot to unpack. And this is the Entrepreneur Enclave, so we want to celebrate everything that you do. So slow down.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
you're saying that in September of this year, let's do that again for me.
September of 2021.
Yes.
Sorry, maybe I said 2022. September of 2021.
Yes.
Well, really May of 2021, I decided that I was going to open my own brokerage.
Awesome.
My previous brokerage, they merged.
Yes.
Excuse me, I sneezed. They merged with another company that I just was not familiar with, and just kind of did not want to go in that direction.
Yes.
So I decided that, okay, it's either go to a specific brokerage that I had my sight set on, or just take the leap of faith and open my own brokerage. And
Awesome.
so I did that because entrepreneurship is obviously in my blood.
Yes.
So it was kind of a no-brainer to open my own brokerage, and so that's what I did. And my goal was, okay, my first year, since we're mostly virtual,
Yes.
is to really establish the business as a virtual business and take my first 6 months and get my feet wet as an actual principal broker.
Yes.
And so now I'm actually starting to recruit agents and get my team together for the brokerage, which is called THC Properties.
Yes. Yes.
And so I've been doing that for 20 years, residential and commercial and rentals, sales and rentals for the last 20 years.
And how far, geographically, how far can you go?
I can go anywhere in the state of New York, technically.
Okay.
I'm actually just filed for my Connecticut license.
Yes.
And I, too, will be getting my New Jersey license. So for my 5-year plan in terms of my brick and mortars once I
Okay.
open them. But I can go anywhere in New York, but where I go typically is where I'm comfortable.
Yes.
At the moment, I'm in Westchester, the Bronx. I do some of Queens,
Yes.
Harlem, Rockland,
Okay.
Putnam, and Dutchess.
Okay. Well, when you get your New Jersey license, I've got a few former students of mine that have all passed their New Jersey real estate license, and I know you would make a great mentor to them. So I'm going to put you in contact with them when you're ready to come to New Jersey. Man,
Oh,
this
wonderful.
is
Thank you so much.
man. Okay, now we got to ask the hard question. We got to ask the hard question.
Okay.
When you're deciding to start your own boutique, as you describe it, when does the business plan come in? Because I teach entrepreneurship, so I've got to ask that question. Do you start a business plan? Do you write a business plan that spells out everything that you need to do going forward for creating your boutique?
Absolutely. So
Oh, right.
as
Yes.
a proponent, I kind of also have done, because I've had other businesses,
Yes.
obviously an entrepreneur every business is not 100% successful, or it is successful for the time period for which it can be successful unless the market shifts. So I had another business back in 2004 where I did personal shopping, and it was a errand and concierge business. And so I am an absolute proponent of business plans, financial
Yes.
projections, before you start your business. It would be the same, because as a realtor, you do a business plan year to year. Just
Yes.
from as an independent contractor, you do a business plan year to year of how you want to create the income that you need to create, because
Yes.
it's sales, right? So
Yes.
you do this individual business plan. So it's a no-brainer that obviously if you're going to start a business where you're going to mentor and take on other agents underneath your business, you actually have to figure out, what kind of agents do I want? What kind of income do I want? What kind of commission splits do I want to offer? What are the incentives? How much money do I want to make year over year in terms of revenue? And how am I going to attain that revenue with these agents and with myself? What other ways in my business can I use? Can I monetize this business? Am I
Yes.
going to get into flipping? So the only way you can know that is if you kind of put it on paper in a business plan form. Some people don't believe it. I have a friend who has a business who never did a business plan, but her business is wildly successful. It's a product-based business.
Gotcha. Okay.
But and with those businesses, it's very different, right? Because
Yes.
either it'll catch, or it won't.
Yes.
But with a service-based business, you definitely have to have some type of measurables that you can look to stick with, so that you can stay on target for year-over-year growth. And sales, you absolutely have to have a business plan.
Absolutely. Thank you. Man, I wish I can find that button that do a drum roll, because that's perfect. That's
Where are your
spot on.
buttons?
Okay, there it is. Well, that's the laughter button. That's the wrong one. Got to find the hand clap. I'm going to find it in a second. But yeah, that's good. So now, looking at my crystal ball and your crystal ball, where are you 3 years from now in terms of development, in terms of additional rollout?
For THD properties?
Yeah, for your property business.
Yes.
Yes.
So in a year, the goal is my first brick and mortar in New Rochelle. My second brick and mortar, I'm considering Harlem, and those two will likely in 3 years be up and running.
Okay.
At the minimum, my New Rochelle location will be running. And so Harlem it depends. It'll be a toss-up between Harlem and New Jersey. I'm really chomping at the bit to get into the New Jersey market.
Yes.
So because my New Rochelle brokerage will be so close to Harlem, I may do that last and go into the New Jersey market, which I have my sights set on a particular area in New Jersey where I'd like to set up shop there. So that's my 3-year projection for having brick and mortars, and ideally by that time, at least 24 to 25 agents.
Wow. Now I found that button.
Okay, let's hit it.
You hear it?
I do now.
Thank you. May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I love North Jersey, and North Jersey is so close to Harlem. You're coming across the Lincoln, Harlem, or GW Bridge. Man, you can serve both places. Wow. In North Jersey, there's some high income property in North Jersey.
Yeah, I mean that's actually where I have specifically, I am looking at Inglewood.
Yep.
Yeah, Inglewood is it makes my heart warm. I don't know why, but it really does. So I mean, it's one of those things. Like when you were a kid and you're like, or a teenager, and you say, "I want this particular car," and you finally are able to get it.
Yes.
That's kind of how the two areas are for me.
Awesome.
From a business projection perspective.
Yeah. That Inglewood Teaneck area is fantastic. Yeah.
I do. I like that area. Yeah.
Wow. Now let's take a pause real quick. When do we start the writing, or was the writing always there?
Yeah, the writing has been there since I want to say my early 20s, mid 20s. I used to write for some websites, some Black-owned websites. I used to write short stories for them.
Yes.
And poetry, did a couple poetry slams. But the book, Lucky Number 5, was really kind of a concept. I was in the shower and it literally came into my head, and I sat down, and unlike other pieces, I have a bunch of unfinished manuscripts that I just couldn't get through. And so what I realized with Lucky was I said, I'm going to do this a little bit differently, right? I'm going to write, I'm going to really tie this in. I'm going to write somewhat of a business plan for the book. I wrote like an outline. I really, really flushed the whole book out in this really, really, really comprehensive outline, to the point where when I wrote the book, it was just super easy. And so the book just was a pastime. It was a downtime in real estate. Wintertime is kind of a downtime in real estate. And I wrote it in 2010, but I didn't publish it until 2013.
Gotcha.
So I wrote it in 2010 in 3 months.
Wow.
It was taking me years to finish the second one, but my focus was elsewhere because I really didn't have plans to write a second one. But so that was just really a pastime. And then when I went to publish it, the thought was, do I try to shop this to some of the major publishing houses, or do I just do what I know instinctually to do, or instinctively to do, which is start my own publishing company and publish it through my own publishing house. So as an entrepreneur, it was a no-brainer. Novelist Publishing was born.
Wow.
And so I LLC'd it, and I did all the due diligence from behind the scenes to get it to look as official as all of the other publishing footprints.
Yes.
And I published Lucky Number 5 through Novelist Publishing. And then shortly thereafter, because I self-published, I started somewhat getting a lot of inquiries about self-publishing, and I started doing seminars with self-publishing. And then eventually, somehow I became to certain people in the particularly African-American community for authors, the person to go to for self-publishing.
Yes.
And so that kind of branched Novelist Publishing into a consulting arena. And so, so I kind of started, obviously you say people want information, they want to do it. So a lot of my mid to high net worth clients who have very provocative books that aren't very well received by the major publishing houses, they will come to me and I'll help facilitate the publishing of their book, because they don't really have the time to put forth into doing all the, nuts and bolts that it takes to get a book from, either in your head to reader or on paper to reader. So Novelista is really just publishes Monica Michelle's book.
Yes.
And does a lot of consulting.
Listen, if I'm walking down the street and I met you, I would never know that you were so fantastic. My God, you are doing so much. And this reminds me, I've got to put you in contact with another dear friend of mine. Her and I, we went to Pitt together at Kimberly Ann Halls.
Okay.
And
Kelly Ann.
No, Kimberly. And so so we did a podcast I guess about a month or two ago. I'm going to tag you in that podcast so you can listen to it. And I want you guys to make the connection, because you guys are like dynamite. And listen, when you guys make the connection and things work out well, remember me. You know, I get a commission. Man, because I'm thinking of you, and I can't stop thinking about Kimberly because you guys are like dynamite. Wow,
So much. Thank
my
you.
God. Now, because, you know, so I asked her this question. I'm going to ask you this question. You have to have something credible about you in order to start writing a book, right? Would you agree to that?
Credible in so much as
I mean, you just can't wake up one morning and say, I want to write a book. There's got to be something credible.
Sure you can.
Oh, you can? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing.
Okay.
Everybody has a story to tell.
Yes.
Is the story going to be received by the masses? That's
Okay.
but everyone has a story to tell.
Okay.
Is your story provocative enough to sell? Everybody thinks that, oh, when I publish a book, I'll sell millions and millions of copies. And that's a very small portion of the author and publishing arena, right?
Gotcha.
There's a very small number of authors who make millions of dollars off of their art.
Got you.
But everyone has a story to tell. Whether that person is able to flush that story out and actually make it into a story that is relatable, readable, comprehensive, fun, provocative, there's the difference.
Okay.
And so the beauty of the publishing industry is I could have a story to tell, but I really don't know how to put the mechanics of the story together.
Yes.
I could say, listen, I have this great story. I don't know how to give it a start. I don't know how to give it a middle, and I don't know how to give it an end date.
Yes.
And that's where ghostwriters or partner writers come into play.
Yes.
So you may have a story, you may not be able to actually pen it yourself, but there are people out there who literally do this for a living. My latest client, Sean Dove, he published I Too Am America, Unloving and Leading Black Men and Boys. He had a co-author that wrote his book for him and or with him, Nick Childs, who is a ghostwriter for a bunch of celebrities.
Yes.
Nick is one of the biggest opponents of sending me over business. And sometimes Nick is the type of writer who can listen to you, listen to your voice, and be able to translate your voice into a book that sounds like you wrote it.
Wow.
And so that's why ghostwriters get, right? You know,
Yes.
we obviously know Barack Obama didn't write a 700, 1,500 page book.
Yeah, but it
And
makes us
Michelle
feel.
Obama did.
But it makes us feel good to know that he did.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But so, and there's a big industry it used to be completely ghostwriting. Now the ghosts are coming forward and kind of getting co-author credits
Yes.
these days. They're no longer kind of staying in the background. But so yeah, everyone can have a story to tell. Again, whether that story is provocative enough or whether you can meet someone who can make it provocative enough
Yes.
for a reader, sure.
And I
Somebody who has, go ahead.
No, I want to thank you for giving me such great clarity again, because, you know, my thing again, you know, when I'm teaching, you know, entrepreneurship and people say, you know, Mr. Kevin, I want to write a book. I'm like, I think you need to hold off on that, because my thing is, and not speaking so eloquently as you did and do, I'm saying there has to be some credibility. There has to be a buy-in. There's got to be a reason why somebody would want to read your story. So I say to people, you know, do something first that's going to give you more credibility in terms of name recognition. That's always been my starting point, and then grow from there. But however, you have given me additional clarity that anyone can write a book. So thank you.
Right. But you
Wow.
are correct, though, because there's a lot of people that will say, oh, my gosh, my life has been so crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I should write a book.
Yeah.
And I often say, you know, like, what makes you think? People,
Yeah.
like, what about your story do you think people will find interesting? Because, and look to see if there's 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 other stories, because while it may have been a wild ride for you,
Yeah.
incredible ride for you,
Yes.
it may not be quite as provocative for somebody else to read, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
you are correct. Like, make sure that, you know, there's some meat and some bones in this story
Yeah.
before you just sit down and write it.
And unfortunately, a lot of us who grow up urban America, inner city, we all have trauma.
Right.
And unfortunately,
Right.
that trauma does not give you a badge of honor that you can now write a story, as you said, that's relatable or even sellable.
Right.
You might have your close girlfriends or boyfriends who want to buy the book and support you, but it may not be to the point where you're getting the checks every month because it is really out there. So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So now
Right.
so now, are you thinking about growing the writing business to include more writing? I guess more writers of different genres now, or that's who comes to you that you take a look at them.
Yeah, it's kind of that business. I'll be very honest. I'm not quite as dedicated,
Okay.
but yeah, that's kind of more. Hey, if it gets sent over, I do a conference. I do a self-publishing panel and seminar at a Black author conference
Yes.
in Atlanta every year, and I kind of get business that way. But I don't. I was very specific in that I did not want to publish other people's work under Novelist Publishing because I really just did not want to take on that liability.
Okay.
Um,
Now,
so while I
ask,
could
answer, because I don't know that. What liability would you be taking on?
in the event that very good instance, one of my clients had written a story about themselves, and when writing the story about themselves, by default, they wrote about their best friend, and their best friend's family was like, no, that's not going to happen. And,
Wow.
um, was prepared to sue me, him, and everybody involved in it to get the person's name out of it.
Wow.
Or an author, just inadvertently writing something that could inexplicably get them sued.
Yes.
Also, just the process of, some authors feel like publishing houses are responsible for more than they are.
Okay.
And what authors don't realize is even the major publishing houses are not responsible for marketing your book. They're not responsible for selling your book.
Yes.
They have the name behind them that gives it a bigger push, and they have the relationships with the Amazons and the distributors and
Yes.
the Barnes and Nobles. But so they might be able to get you in brick and mortar shops faster. But in terms of sales and driving sales and understanding the Amazon algorithm to get you up on the bestseller list, that's not their priority.
Okay.
So you still have the onus is still on you to get your book sold. And so a lot of times authors who are not familiar with this or familiar with the publishing industry will put that burden on you. And that's just not something that I was willing to take on. And particularly since it was really a passion project. It wasn't something that I said, oh, okay, I want to go in and I want to completely monetize this business and make a ton of money off of my book. I really just wrote the book because I had the story and I wrote it. There were really no expectations.
Got you. So now, looking at all three industries, all three passionate businesses that you're in, what gives you the greatest challenges with each and every one of those?
So with real estate, the challenge is obviously market driven.
Yes.
Like the current market, it's a seller's market, and it is a very, very frustrating market. So the reality is you have to be able to pivot very quickly to determine how you can continue to stay in the business. So
Yes.
if the pivot is, okay, let me pivot into fixing and flipping, let me pivot from sales to rentals because those are turning over quickly.
Yes.
But you have to be able to pivot fast enough to adjust to the market so that you don't get stagnant because you can drop off the cliff very quickly in real estate. So, it's obviously economy driven. Back when the bubble burst with the mortgages, you really had to pivot. Now you have to pivot because whatever is driving the sales of obviously low inventory, the sales up right now and the prices up right now, you have to figure out how to navigate through this market with your buyers.
Yes.
So that's for real estate. For publishing, it is, and particularly self-publishing, which has actually gained a lot. Self-publishing kind of parallels women in smoking. It has gained a lot of traction over, I want to say, the last decade. Even a lot of the major published authors are doing hybrid self-publishing and major publishing. So with self-publishing and publishing, it is really just staying on trend and maybe staying authentic to your voice, and or changing your voice. If you write in, right, J.K. Rowling wrote in her voice, but then she changed and wrote under another moniker in I think it was like sci-fi or young adult, some other type of genre.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just being,
No, I was agreeing with you. Good.
yeah, so it's just being able to adapt with it and either going digital, going audible, because a lot of people, a lot of brick and mortars have closed in the publishing industry and the book industry. And so being able to get your story to readers
Yes.
outside of just the old standard print books. So
Yes.
some people don't print books at all. They just are digital and they just upload them and they make tons of money just doing that. So being able to shift in that industry, and then in the cigar industry, there's really right now, I think as a promoter, and I would say this to all the promoters and all the female promoters, it's how far will you take promoting cigars until you pivot your business and determine, do I actually want to be in the cigar industry? And by that, I mean, promoters are really kind of dancing around the outside of the cigar industry. We're just kind of the hype men for the industry. But the industry is either I have a tobacco farm, I own a cigar lounge, or I partnered and get an exclusive license with a tobacco farm and I produce my own cigars. But you have to have some real tangible presence in the actual industry, right? Not the culture, but the industry.
Yeah.
And if not, do you just say, okay, well, I'm done with promoting and I just want to go back to being a regular old smoker and enjoying the love of the leaf?
Well, I think a lot of the women that I know, so they are promoters. They dance around, but then they started to create fashion for the cigar industry. They do accessory for the cigar industry. And then some of them are even toying around with trying to do the accoutrements in terms of the libations for the industry. But the other ones they just enjoy it, and this is the opportunity for them to see how far and how long they can ride it.
Right. I mean, and that's essentially any promoter, right?
Yeah,
in the 90s when promoting parties, everybody went to certain parties. At some point, there's a shelf life in it.
Yeah.
And so you have to determine, okay, I'm just going to ride this wave until it's over and then go back to being, a regular old smoker, or I'm going to shift and I really am enjoying this industry and I want a complete immersion into it in a different way.
One of the things I think, and who am I? I think that there is like oversaturation right now, and I don't know if that's because of the pandemic, but man, it's like every group up and down the seaboard is doing a Black Cigar Festival. Like, how many can you go to? Like, wow.
I mean, you literally just opened Pandora's box for me, so that don't even get me started, okay. Right? I literally just had this conversation with someone yesterday who asked if I was going to one of the cigar weeks, and I kind of said, you know what, I think I'm going to take 2022. Although while Six of Stilettos is participating in the New York arm of Cigar Culture Week, as we were asked and requested to be a part of it, and so we gladly did it in 2021, and we're going to do it in 2022.
Yes.
It's just one. It just is. There are too many.
Yes.
It's for me as a grown person who pays taxes and a mortgage.
Yes.
It's cost prohibitive because I'm just kind of like, I don't need to be at all these cigar weeks.
Yeah.
Particularly if there's no introduction of actual new cigars that are just new to market, or a new brand of liquor that, could benefit me. It's a lot, and I don't knock them because I think they're doing it for their area, right?
Yeah.
Houston wants to do it for their area. Atlanta wants to do it for their area. Chicago maybe, I don't know if they have one, but I know DC just launched one. I think New Jersey has one.
Well,
so everyone wants.
New Jersey has two. They have a South Jersey one. They have a North Jersey one. Philadelphia has one. Crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
But the interesting thing is I've been to quite a few of them, and they all are kind of Well, they're very similar in their production in terms of, I think New York is the only one, not to be biased here, but I think New York is New York is the only one that does it a little different. I think all of the other cigar weeks there's a consortium of people who get together and produce a week's worth of events, right? Or
Gotcha.
one singular person that produces a week's worth of events. And I think the difference in New York is every single promoter that does a cigar event produces their own event, and each event in the New York Cigar Culture Week is unique to that particular promoter's branded event.
Got
So
you.
every event is going to be absolutely different from the event before it, because
Yes.
it's like my Six of Stilettos footprint is, elegant ladies of the leaf. So you're going to get a nice dinner. You'll probably get dancing. You'll probably get some nice cigars and some networking, suits, dresses. Whereas Smokenik, which is also part of New York Cigar Culture Week, is more like a picnic style, kind of like a hybrid of dinner and blanc or one of those events, and it includes cigars, and
Yes.
women can come and incorporate their creative style in decorating a table, and there's party, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And obviously the Gentlemen's Cigar Smoking Society, they have theirs where it's more like a social type of networking type of event, which is the traditional cigar event.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's other promoters that will be involved, but I think the difference is it's kind of a group of promoters that come together to produce very, very unique events for each day. So
Yes.
so it doesn't look like one fluid person just said, hey, we're going to have this 2 cigar brands are going to be here on Friday, and then this 2 cigar brands plus this whiskey brand is going to be here on Saturday. And it's really just everybody getting together doing the same thing at each event, just with different cigars. These are actually uniquely curated events for each day. And so going to other cigar weeks, that's what I've noticed. And Black Smoke in Miami has really, I went to the first one, and it is really, they've really increased their presence and their numbers. And so that was really one of the first big ones.
Yes.
And so they've really increased their attendees over the years. But it's getting to the point where I don't know how everyone thinks that everyone can support it. And my guess is they don't really produce it for out of towners. They really produce it for people within their community. But I agree with you. It is getting a little oversaturated. It's kind of getting, I'd like to see someone do something a little bit different. Maybe not call it although that's the fad, but maybe not call it a week, maybe call it something else. But
and for me, I've got, like I said, 27, 28 years of smoking. So I mean, I'm just cool. Get 1 or 2 fellas on the porch, get a bottle, we smoke some cigars, watch some TV, and call it a day.
Right.
That's
and that's when you really love it. When you really love it, like people think, oh, I don't see you out in lounges a lot, Monica. And I'm like, but I smoke regularly.
Yeah. Now, we do a thing in Trenton here called it's called Cigar Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
And it's about 12 to 15 guys and girls. We get together. It's all low key. It's in the back of the smokehouse, the 1911 barbecue smokehouse. And we do that every week. It's low key, nothing fancy, but we just have a good time. And these are guys and girls that smoke every day. Right. And I'm good with that. But, I did all the traveling all across 4 or 5 states. I did all that. I don't need that. But if you don't need it. But if someone else still wants to do that, more power to them. But like we're talking about now, at some point, we need, as you said, we need to find a pivot. It needs to do something bigger, better, greater, right?
Right.
Because one of the things that I enjoyed, and I know we don't have it, is remember when Cigar Aficionado used to do their 3 hour, big 4 hour, big smoke. That was cool. That was something where no matter where you were.
They're doing it this year.
In New York?
Oh, no, they're not doing it in New York. They are doing it in Hollywood, Florida, in conjunction with the Whiskey Festival. And they are doing it in, obviously, Vegas in November. But they did bring it back. I don't think it's been in New York for quite some time.
Got you. Because I know the last time it was in New York, it was down by the Chelsea Piers, right?
Yeah.
Now, see, something like that would be worthy to go to. that's the because when I used to go to the Big Smoke in New York, I think the tickets were $350, $400, right? You didn't,
right, but then you're getting that as well as
Yeah.
Cigar Festival
Yeah.
in Lake Harmony in Pennsylvania. That's my point. You are getting introduced to new cigars or
Yes.
new pairings, and
Yes.
so there's something. The value proposition is there.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of the cigar weeks, they introduce a lot of the black owned brands, and I understand in our community there's a whole, that could be a whole other podcast about the subculture of African American influence in the
Yes.
cigar industry in the last 10 years, and how kind of we feel like we have to pave our own way for acceptance into a community that has by and large been populated by Latinos and non-Blacks.
Absolutely.
And so, just like we always do, we create our own culture, which hence what the cigar weeks and things have been born.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's more for fun and pomp and circumstance. But like real smokers, and I'm not gonna let me reel that back. Smokers who don't need the pomp and circumstance. I'm serious because I don't want to offend anyone, but smokers who don't need the pomp and circumstance may say, "Yeah, that's great, but I'd rather do something where I can either be educated more, or I can see something new, or I can be introduced to something new."
Yes.
And I think maybe that's the pivot. That's the jam, right?
Yeah.
That's the jam for these cigar weeks. Like figure out a way to introduce us to cigar brands, and not just black-owned brands, because most black-owned brands are really just licenses from already created brands, and they just license, their particular blend of cigar.
Exactly. Exactly.
Either that or listen, get those grandparents 110 acres of land and start your own tobacco field, brother. So
because the only one I think is Carl Malone. Carl Malone
does he have a tobacco farm?
He has his own tobacco farm. Yes.
Yeah.
Because when I want to get correct with this. When he started his own cigar brand, his daughter actually went to school to understand tobacco and producing tobacco, and she said to her father, "What do you want to do?" He says, "I don't know. I want to produce cigars." So she actually runs the company.
Very interesting.
So but outside of that, everybody else is like they've got a licensing agreement, or they're buying wholesale from someone else, and they're just putting their own label on it.
Correct.
Yeah, no,
Correct.
Let's stop that.
Right. So
yeah.
That's my point. So at some point, someone has to figure out, okay, I really want to be in this industry, not just as a cigar shop owner, because there's certain areas like Atlanta or the Atlanta metro area where they are so saturated with cigar lounges. Like I'm going for a week in August, and I'm like, I don't even know where to go. There's so many of them. I mean, I know where to go, but it's just like you can't very well support all of them in one week. So, you just say, how else do you want to be involved? How serious are you about it? Or are you just like, let me just get this money grab really quick and make this money on party promoting?
Yes.
And then move on to something else, which, listen, I respect everyone's hustle as well.
Absolutely.
So, so I mean, we'll see how it goes. It's been an interesting ride to see it thus far. Light up a cigar and watch it happen.
The funniest one for me, which I is they do house music in cigars.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So I am.
That's clearly a New Jersey thing, because y'all love some house music.
Yeah. Well, I'm a house head. So so when I go to these outdoor house music festivals, I will take a cigar because you'll meet a few guys and you'll sit down and relax and listen to the music. But to go to an indoor cigar club to listen to house music, I'm not a big fan of it, because house music has to be listened to loud, right? Really loud, right? And so for me, sometimes the art of enjoying a cigar is also being able to have some music, whether it's house music, but it's down low, so you can still have a half decent conversation. But when you're listening to house music, you don't really want to have a conversation, but now you're trying to get people to come together and smoke a cigar. I'm not really understanding that. But again, if that's what you want to do and that's what you want to market and promote and it worked well for you, then have at it. But I won't be there.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a whole other podcast, right?
Yeah,
like you could have a whole podcast about, because there are a lot of people who are not proponents of
yeah,
DJs and cigar lounges.
yeah,
And, I'm a fan of it every once in a while, but
yeah,
for the most part, I like to go to a cigar lounge and sit down and write or do some work or just
yeah.
smoke and, maybe watch a game or just converse. But I definitely am not. I would not be one of those people who went. I think I did when there was a lounge in New Jersey that during COVID had something outside, and they were, I think, the only thing that was really open in terms of cigar lounges in 2020. And so it was kind of by default you went there, in addition to the fact that everyone was in the house for 3 months and really just wanted to be out of the house.
Yeah.
You just kind of defaulted into stumbling into this cigar lounge once a week.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the next question, I just want to share this with you. I'm talking to some of my fellas. We're going to be doing a cigar podcast. So I'll keep you posted. So we'll have a couple of people on the podcast.
That'll be great.
Yeah. So because I did one just happenstance with my buddy Marvin and Reggie. And that was just so funny because I was saying to Marvin, I was like, Marvin, what do you do in terms of your pairing? And he said sometimes he's like a sky blue Powerade in cherry Coke. And I'm like, wow. So, Marvin
but sometimes, not for nothing, he's onto something. I mean, sometimes the best pairing with a cigar is water, because you really will get the best experience in terms of knowing flavors, when you don't pair it with anything. You don't, you really get the understanding of the cigar at that point.
That's my man, Marvin Vaughn. So hopefully when we go to schedule some time to do this cigar podcast, I'm going to have you meet him, audibly, through the podcast, and we're working from there. But let me ask this question though, Monica. So in any of these enterprises, have you had any regrets?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say it's a regret.
Okay, gotcha.
I part of me wishes I would have started my own real estate company 10 years ago instead of now. That's the only kind of, I kind of feel like I dropped the ball on doing it 10 years ago when I probably should have done it then.
But do you think that you were ready 10 years ago?
Obviously not, because I didn't do it, right? It's like now, when I did it now, it was just really just a no-brainer. It wasn't even but 10 years ago, I think the market was a little bit different. I don't know. I just feel like I probably should have done it about 10 years ago. I don't think I've increased that much more in knowledge. I just think that I probably would have been at a certain place now.
Okay.
And that's really, if you want to call it a regret. But again, I also believe in divine order. So everything happens everything happens in its right time. So I'm not gonna dwell on that.
Now, have you ever thought about moving, like to the Midwest, to a warmer climate, so you can pretty much sell all year round, or open up an office there?
No, I have never thought about moving to the Midwest.
Okay.
Never. No, I would not want to move to the Midwest. I'm not a fan of interlying states in the United States.
Okay.
No.
Anything like a warmer climate though, like Florida, Georgia, Atlanta, that area?
Atlanta and Georgia, no. I mean, I have my family had property there,
yes.
And while I love Atlanta, and my grandparents retired there when I was young, and so I spent the bulk of my younger years in the Atlanta, DeKalb County area.
Yes.
No, I mean, and that part of the reason is because the number of realtors is probably commensurate to the number of cigar lounges. There's so many realtors.
Got you. Okay.
And so, there's so many realtors, and I'm in a group on Facebook for Black women who are in real estate, and the number of women who are continuously getting, Black women particularly, who are continuously getting licensed in Georgia, I just keep looking at it and say, how are all of these women getting business? There's so many of them.
Yes.
Florida, perhaps.
Okay.
but maybe not. Like I'm such a northern woman
Okay.
that the South just is not really my jam.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. No.
I think the New Jersey market is where it's at.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Now, speaking of women, right? How did so many women get interested into real estate? Because yeah, you're right. It's like, man, once we find something, we just like oversaturate. I mean, it's like every other woman is a real estate agent. Like how
Well,
does?
women have always been, yeah, women. I mean,
But I mean,
although the
I
faces.
mean, I mean, women of color though.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say women have always been. It's been black women that hasn't.
Yeah.
But so in my 20-year career, like at the forefront of the real estate industry, if you go to a lot of the conferences and things, you will see at the forefront it's still by and large populated by white men.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, but I think what happened during COVID was everyone thought it's got to be better than this,
Yes.
right? Everyone was sitting there at home, you know, eating oranges and making sure, taking vitamin C, making sure they didn't get COVID,
Yeah. Yeah.
and trying to figure out, another plan.
Yes.
What else? What else can I do? And I think real estate, just like I said earlier in my dialogue, I think people think going into real estate is the easiest and the path of least resistance in terms of entrepreneurship, because
Yes.
you take a 70, 80 hour course, you have this real estate license, and now you can go out and conquer the world and sell everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And right, sales is everyone. The funny part is everyone thinks they are good at sales, but they are not.
Yes.
Right, sales. There's a very good finesse to sales, because there are people that I know that are like, I can't get a listing or I can't get a sale, and no matter how hard they try, and they don't realize like there's a specific way that you have to market in order to get business, if you are, particularly if you're new in the business.
Absolutely.
And so I think what happened was a lot of people just thought real estate was the easiest career to get into. You don't need a college degree to get into real estate. You really
Yes.
just need to take these courses. And if you are dedicated in taking these courses and passing the exams, I mean, in this group that I'm in, I literally see women saying, I'm about to take the exam for the 6th time. And I'm kind of like, girl, you better.
Better fry some chicken.
So you did it.
No, I
Perhaps
understand.
start a cupcake business. I don't know, but
Exactly.
yeah. And I can't knock them, because some people just aren't good exam takers. That's the reality of it. They could be absolutely outstanding saleswomen, but just not good sales exam takers. But I think that's what happened. I think a lot of women, and I think up where I am in Westchester County, there are not a lot of us. There are not a lot of Black women who are in the industry. There are I think probably in the city, Brooklyn, Westchester County, without question.
Yes.
There are a handful of us, and definitely an even smaller. That handful gets smaller when it comes to Black women that you actually know or have name recognition.
Yeah. And that's almost like the same thing for me, right? I was doing the podcast before the pandemic, but once we got into the pandemic, everybody came out with a podcast. So you might ask me, well, Kevin, how were you so successful, and how are you being so successful? For me, had I not had a full-blown sponsor, I would not be in this space. Right. I've got a sponsor, and shout out to Ed Miller, who's my sponsor from Pro Tapes. Had it not been for him and seeing and us always I guess having a previous relationship with supporting some of my other programming that I do and did, I would not be in this space. And so again, folks were just jumping into any space because they had all this time. But now that we're coming out of it, like, are you still standing? Because and
are you still interested? Everyone needed something to do. Idle hands, right? Everyone needed something to do. And are you as the world opens back up and you are actually going back to work, are you still going to be dedicated to it? And consistency, while you may not be, seeing incredible revenues and profits at the moment, that's what I say to people who I mentor in real estate. You may have a 3 or 4 month period where you have nothing in your pipeline, you have nothing going, and then you'll have another 3 or 4 month period where you'll have, 20 deals waiting to close. So, but you have to stay consistent because you have to be very, very self-motivating,
Yes.
and a self-starter, and be willing to pick yourself up when things happen. And this very market right here is one of those markets where, I literally have 4 clients who have put in 4 or 5 offers on several different places, and they've been outbid, and you kind of say,
Wow.
oh my Lord, what, Jesus, take the wheel. Because, eventually some of those will say, listen, I'm going to go to Connecticut, which is hence the reason I'm getting my Connecticut, or I'm going to rent.
Yes.
And you say to yourself, wow, they've exhausted so much time, but you
Yes.
have to stay self-motivated. So I think a lot of people between getting into, because you also see that there were so many people that now do reels and are on social media,
Yes.
their social media presence has increased. I think what's happened is that, in real estate, because it's entrepreneurial, people are just trying to find different ways to bring in money and monetize themselves, so
Yes.
that themselves or something that they know or a talent, so that they are not in a position where if they lost their job due to some unforeseen pandemic
Yeah,
or
right.
unforeseen, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're like, I have some other security. I
Yes.
also have seen a lot more African Americans getting into the buying, holding, buying,
Yes.
flipping, and Airbnb business
Yes.
to bring in revenue. So the COVID really, really changed. It was a complete paradigm shift, I
Absolutely.
think, by and large, for African Americans in terms of, where they are and where they would like to be and what legacies they'd like to leave for their families.
Good, bad, or indifferent, And so
Yeah.
I love this space. I am going to be in this space for quite some time, because the podcast, the Entrepreneur Enclave, is just an extension of what I was doing. It just gives me a larger reach now. So I am excited for this and for people like you. But just to pick up on what you were saying, I think that the COVID or pandemic was just fantastic, because sometimes it's a little overkill though, because I was mentioning yesterday, Notre Dame University, for the first time ever, they're going to have a football game against another historical black college, Tennessee State. Now,
That's interesting.
had it not been for the pandemic and people saying, we want our black players that go to historical black colleges, we want them to have more exposure with the NFL. And if what had not been for the pandemic and social injustice, this never would have happened.
Right.
And
Right.
now all of a sudden, 2 powerhouses in their own individual rights, they're going to come together and have a football game, I think in August or September, right?
Right.
Just recently, CBS, they had the first ever historical black college all-star basketball game.
Yeah.
Game.
Yeah.
So had it not been for them seeing black folks hurting and the social injustice that has been done to us, they never would have broached this.
I mean, Kevin, we could really get into a whole, I've given you like 4 other podcasts that you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about the whole Black Lives Matter movement and how for some people it really, really increased. I have a friend who has a business that she launched, the Bubbly line, and the Bubbly is just shout out to Marvina and Stuyvesant Champagne. It is. We went to college together.
Yes.
It is actually an outstanding champagne.
Yes.
And I want to say she launched, not on purpose, launched during a time when, everyone was looking for Black-owned businesses. Everyone was kind of like, and it, aside from the fact that her champagne is just absolutely outstanding in her marketing and her branding and her dedication to work as an entrepreneur. I mean, she's incredibly, incredibly dedicated to her brand and making her brand a success. She has been seen. I think her presence was known more because of the fact that people were now looking for brands and looking for people to support that had Black-owned businesses and Black-owned footprints.
Yes.
So I definitely think that Black Lives Matter definitely, I want to say, woke up some of the sleeping, because I don't think anybody, I used to say this before Black Lives Matter, before COVID, like, if you guys think this is a post-racial society, you're crazy. Like, you really are crazy. But that's my own belief that I could talk about at another time. But I think, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, I think it all just brought it all to a festering head. And
Absolutely.
it really still is just bubbling. It hasn't even exploded yet. I really still don't think. So that and the small nuances of having an HBCU, shout out to my HBCUs, I graduated from one.
Yes.
Having them on major networks, having the Deion Sanders, the head coaches, and pulling these kids from PWIs and giving them contracts to go to Black colleges. It's like, let's take back our money. Let's take back our talent. Let's show them that we have these arenas where within the Black community we can stay and still make it into the NBA and still make it into the NFL.
Absolutely.
Tennis players, it's everywhere.
I just had a fantastic idea, and I know you're going to love it too. It's a two-part question, or two-part idea. Let's get your girlfriend on the show with the champagne, right?
Oh, sure.
And then we're going to do the Monica Michelle series, because you've got so much you want to talk about.
I would love to do it. I would absolutely love to do it.
Oh, my God. So we're going to plan it. Listen, this is what we're going to do. When it gets warmer weather, I'm going to take my equipment outside. I'm going to have some tequila. I'm going to have some cigars. And we're just going to talk for 4 or 5 hours. And every hour, I'm just going to cut it up, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. And we'll
that'll be outstanding.
It's going to be, man, it's going to be fantastic. No holds bar. And you said that your best cigar was the 1926 or the 64?
So my actual favorite cigar is the Ashton ESG 24-year salute.
Yes.
That's my favorite cigar.
Okay.
The 1964 is the first non-flavored cigar.
Okay, got you. Well, we're gonna send you one of those, one of each, right?
Thank you.
And I'm gonna have my everyday cigar is the Padron 7000. That's my everyday, right?
Nice. That's a heavy hitter.
Yeah. Well, no, not really. No, because I smoke it so often. It's not. So when I really want to amp it up, I do the 1926, 48, or 47.
Okay, all great cigars. I've had
that gives me a punch where you gotta sit down and be quiet before you get up and move around.
Or have a nice steak, or have some type of nice meal beforehand, so you're not dizzy.
Well, sometimes I'll smoke one of those in the morning.
My gosh!
And a cup of orange juice, and because I love a full body cigar, get your day rocking. But so once we finish this podcast, the beginning of next week, I'm gonna send you some dates, and we're going to just when the weather gets warm, we're just going to sit down for 4 or 5 hours. We're just going to chop it up, and man, that's going to be a bestseller podcast. That episode.
I would love it. I absolutely look forward to it.
So you've talked so much today, Monica, and I thank you. There's two things. Anything else you want the listening audience to know about you?
Yeah, no, I I think I've told them my entire life, other than, really my personal life. I really am, as crazy as it sounds, I do have a lot of downtime. I do love watching sports. I do love hanging out with my family and my friends. But short of that, no, that's what I spend my days doing, kind of rotating between those three pastimes and careers.
Okay. So now give us a main contact email for your best business that you want people to reach out to you through.
Sure. You can reach out to me through at monica@monicamichellcooper.com.
Yes. One more time.
So right now, Monica Michelle Cooper is being built by my web designer, but I had a similar instance where someone asked, where can we find you? And I realized with these three different businesses, I really should have one center of influence where anyone can go and find out about me. So Monica Michelle Cooper is it, and it is currently being designed.
Excellent. Monica, this has been fantastic. You have exceeded my greatest expectation. My God.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you.
Now, so give me about 10 minutes, once we click off, I'm going to put you in contact with Kimberly Ann Halls, because I want you guys to connect. This is going to be, because she's an author, and she has a Facebook page called Killing It Over 40, or 40 and
nice.
Killing It. So you can so she has, but I'm also going to tag you in her podcast that her and I did. It was quite funny.
Nice. I would love to hear it.
Monica, thank you. Continue to be blessed. Continue to be well. All right.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've had a great time.
Absolutely. Let's talk and text later on.
Okay.
All right. Peace now.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
That concludes another episode of The Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wortham, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. We hope you found this episode informative and enlightening. If you have any questions or comments about any of our episodes, please call 609-731-9311 or email Kevin at minding-our-business.com. We look forward to joining us for our next one. Until next time.